Hey there, and welcome to Blue Ridge Community Church. My name is Kayla DeLee, and I'm so excited that you guys are here. Let's join the worship team in the loft for a time of worship.
The atmosphere is changing now, for the Spirit of the Lord is here. The evidence is all around that the Spirit of the Lord is here. The atmosphere is changing now, for the Spirit of the Lord is here. The evidence is all around that the Spirit of the Lord is here. Overflow in this place, fill our hearts with your love. Your love surrounds us. You're the reason we came to encounter your love. Your love surrounds us. The atmosphere is changing now, for the Spirit of the Lord is here. The evidence is all around that the Spirit of the Lord is here. Overflow in this place, fill our hearts with your love. Your love surrounds us. You're the reason we came to encounter your love. Your love surrounds us. Overflow in this place, fill our hearts with your love. Your love surrounds us. You're the reason we came to encounter your love. Your love surrounds us.
Surrounded by your love, Jesus. Oh,
Spirit of God, fall fresh on us. We need your presence. Your kingdom come, your will be done, here as in heaven. Spirit of God, fall fresh on us. We need your presence. Your kingdom come, your will be done, here as in heaven. Spirit of God, fall fresh on us. We need your presence. Your kingdom come, your will be done, here as in heaven. We welcome you, Lord, in this place, in this time of our lives, Lord. We need you here, where we're at right now. Spirit of the Lord is here. The evidence is all around, for the Spirit of the Lord is here.
Hello again. My name is Kayla DeLee, and Jesus does truly reign. We're going to continue our time in worship to Him through giving. This is a time for those of us who call Blue Ridge home to give back to God what was already His. You can see all the different ways we have to give through our website. We're super excited to announce that this fall we'll be launching life groups. This is an amazing opportunity for you to get back into community and experience all that God has to offer through His children. If you're interested in registering for a life group or want more information, you definitely want to check out our website. It's really fun. You can filter all of our groups based on your needs. Are you only available on Wednesdays? Then filter it by groups that meet on Wednesdays. Are you looking for a group that's only for women? Then you can filter it by groups that minister specifically to women. Whatever group you wish to join, it's definitely something you don't want to miss out on. So check out our website and register today. We're also launching our care ministries. If you'd like to know more about our care ministries and what they have to offer or register for them, please check out our website. If you're in town and would like to visit us in person, we have some opportunities for you to do so as well. You can come to our Bedford campus, which meets at 10 a.m. on Sundays at the Westgate Shopping Center in Bedford, right outside our new location. It is an outdoor service, so it is weather permitting. If you're interested in coming, it's going to be an amazing opportunity. I have seen people out there in their cars, sitting in their folding chairs, outside worshiping Jesus, and it has been so cool to watch. If you would prefer to come to our new London campus, you can do so as well. We have 2 services. We have the 8:30 and the 10:30, and we no longer need registrations if you'd like to come to either one of those services. But if you have a child between kindergarten and 5th grade, we do have our kids programs available, and we do ask that you register them ahead of time. You can do so on our website. We're going to be continuing our sermon series called You Asked For It. So let's join Woody in the studio.
You Ask For It. That's the title of this series, and what it reflects is answers to your questions or attempts to address the questions that you gave us a few weeks ago when we asked you, what's been your experience in this COVID-19 season of our lives, you individually and us as a church? And you gave us those questions, you gave us your comments, and so we wanted to try to address the more numerous questions that you asked, because they did sort of group. There were several hundred responses to it. And so over the past few weeks, in an attempt to address your questions, we've looked at things like what's normal or the new normal, because the questions were, when will we get back to it? What will it look like? We've also talked about the whole idea of, is this the end? Or what does this have to do with the end times? Is that where we are now? Because the Bible does speak about that. We also talked about us and them because of the contention and the polarization that's happening in our culture right now. And today I want to talk about another question, which roughly had to do with how do we go forward as a church? How do we operate? How do we function as a church? Because it's obvious that a lot of what we used to do, we're not doing, and a lot of what we used to do, we can't do, and maybe a lot of what we used to do, we won't do again. And so what does this look like for us as a church, for you as an individual, for me? Well, I want to take you on my personal journey, and I want to let you know what I'm learning and what's happening in me. Now, the conclusion that I am coming to is one that I never expected. It's the opposite of really of who I am, And the people who have been around me for a long time, who work with me, they're surprised at it too. And so what is the answer, or what is the answer that God is producing in me for Blue Ridge and for us as Blue Ridge as to how do we do church from here on out? We know what the purpose of the church is. That's never changed. Jesus was very clear when he left here. He basically gave us our marching orders, all 4 of the Gospels. The one that's most famous, we call the Great Commission. He said, go and make disciples. And he told us how we do that in the very first statement he made to his followers, very first followers. The first words basically out of his mouth, follow me and I will make you become fishers of men. And so that's what we're supposed to be doing. But how do we do that? How do we be the church in this season? And the answer that I have arrived at, that God is revealing to me, is that we're going to do it. We're going to go forward by serving. I said I would take you on a journey, so let me take you on my journey as far as this is concerned. Let me take you on the journey which is mine, but hopefully will help you understand and you go on the same kind of journey or come along with us on that journey as we become more and more the church that God wants us to be in this era, in this COVID-19 new world that we're living in. So my journey started, obviously, a long time ago. And it had to do with fulfilling this commission that Jesus gave us. Because you see, the church that this church grew out of, which I was a part of, was a really, really good church. And we were doing almost all of the things that churches are supposed to do, except one. We were not really encountering people and causing them to encounter the gospel, the good news, that is the reality that Jesus came into this world and gave up his life so he could give us his life so that we could live a new life. That's the good news, not good advice, but good news, that which is proclaimed. And that's what we are to proclaim, and that is the basis of everything we do as a church. But we weren't doing it that well. And so, through a series of events, God brought me to a place where we changed, we shifted. We changed from where we were meeting, we changed our location, we changed our style of ministry, we changed our name, and we became Blue Ridge Community Church. And the approach that we were using is what some have called an attractional approach. That is, what can we do that would remove the obstacles that often keep people away from Christianity, away from the church? And so we did change our language. That is, trying to use language that everybody else used, trying to do things with excellence, because oftentimes the church has lagged behind. And so we wanted a place that when we, as part of this church, invited people to it, we would be proud of it. That is, we would be able to invite them to hear music, to hear messages, to have their children treated in a way that would stand out. And so that was the way we began this journey. As we did that, there were some other steps that I had to take and we had to take in this journey. Now, the second phase or step, if you will, really had to do with how we do this. Let me tell you how I was trained to do it. That is how we share Jesus with people, how we present the gospel, because the gospel, while, as I've said, we're serving, nevertheless, the gospel is something that must be spoken, it must be communicated. And the way I was trained to do it, and this was very freeing, but it had to follow something that was much less than freeing, is that we would get together as a group of people who were interested in talking to others about Jesus, and we would learn a methodology. It might have been, there were any number of them over the years. I think I've learned and even taught, seems like all of them, but things like the 4 spiritual laws or 5 steps to peace with God or Evangelism Explosion, or any number, as I've said, of others. The problem, though, was that the way this was implemented was that you would get together, let's say on a Saturday morning with some other people. You would learn this particular method. You would then practice on each other. And then in the afternoon, you would go out and you would maybe to a mall, maybe you knock on doors, to some public place, and you would attempt to get into conversations that you would be able to use to tell people about Jesus, about this good news, because it really is good news. It's the very best news. It is how we move from death to life, from captivity to slavery to freedom. But as I would go out and use this methodology, I'll just be honest with you, I hate it. I hated every moment of it because I was treating other people in a way that I would really not like to be treated. And so it was a great relief to me to come to a place where I realized that God made us all differently, and there were different approaches, different styles of sharing the good news that would be appropriate to individual personalities. For example, I've already told you, the approach that I was introduced to, that everybody used, was more of a direct approach. You just went to people and you confronted them with the message, and oftentimes it was something that caused people to be offended. Now, there are people who can do this, and it works for them. There are people in the New Testament who do this. It's a direct approach. Peter would be an example of it, the Apostle Peter. But I realized or saw that there were other instances, people in the New Testament who did it a different way. For example, even from the very beginning, there's a woman in John chapter 4. We know her as the woman at the well. Jesus met her at a well. And after she had this encounter with Jesus, she went back into the village where she lived, and she invited everybody there to come and hear Jesus. And many, if not most of them, did. And as a result, lots and lots of people gave their lives to Christ. We would call that an invitational style. Or maybe there's a testimonial style that people tell their stories. In John chapter 9, Jesus talks to a blind man and causes him to see. And it causes no end of consternation and disturbance with the religious authorities. And so they come and they ask this man. And finally, in exasperation, he just says, I don't know the answer to all of your theological questions. All I know is this: once I was blind, and now I can see. This is who I was. This is who I am now. This is what I've experienced. And probably you know people who have stories that are huge, that are impactful. Now mine, it's my story, but it's not that kind of story. And so there's testimonial styles, there's all kinds of styles. For example, I have an intellectual style. Now, thankfully, you don't have to be intellectual to use it. Basically, it consists of talking about, explaining, even teaching the Bible. And if you've been through like the Encounter group, you know that is the way I work and function most effectively. And we could go, there are a number of those different kinds of styles in the New Testament. And as I learned that there were, it brought huge freedom to me. I not only learned that, but there's another step in this process. And that is, where are the people that you're talking to in terms of their spiritual receptivity? That is, it required, for example, an understanding that salvation, as we define it, is not just an event, but it is a process. And so what we used, and this was helpful to me, and I think helpful to us as a church, is that people who are approaching Jesus, coming toward Jesus, are on a continuum. Let's just say a -10, a -9, a -8, a -7, a -6, and so on, until they come to faith. Now, -10 might be a person who's never even heard the name of Jesus. There are those kinds of people, mostly outside this country, but I have met them. I have talked to them personally. So I know that there are. Then a -9, as we move in, might be someone who has heard of Jesus, but they don't have any need for him, any use for him. Maybe they're even antagonistic toward him. And then as we move -8, -7, people become more open, more knowledgeable, more receptive to who Jesus is and to his message, until finally they come to a place where they accept the story of Jesus, the account of Jesus, the resurrection of Jesus. They see that they have a personal need for it, and then they embrace Jesus, and they step across that line. And it was so helpful to realize that everybody isn't approached the same way. And it's really helpful in this season of life, because as a culture, we're seeing more and more people who are in the extreme minuses, -9, 8, and 7, because people don't have a favorable disposition toward the church anymore. You know it, I know it. People don't feel that the church has answers for them, that they have any need for it. And so we're really starting at that lower end. Now, how do we reach those people? Because what really reaches them is not somebody preaching to them. It's really not more information or a good argument. It really is exactly what I've talked about. It is this idea of serving. See, we're moving from an attractional model as a church to some call a missional model, from come and see to go and be. Now, the reality here is that I should have known this, really. And I did know it and do know it because of what God has already been doing. When we came to Bedford, for example, I'm part of a leadership team in Bedford, one of the multi-sites, and the way we gained an entree into this community was not the way I would naturally have done it. But fortunately, God was in control of it, and there are people who really listened to and moved in this direction. And so as we came here, we eventually ended up, the first thing we did was to pray, which is the first thing we always do. We prayed about it, felt like this is where God wanted us, and we made some shifts along the way, ended up at Bedford Elementary School, and there we had opportunities. For example, people with hospitality, sort of gifts. We fed teachers at luncheons and things like that. We funded for 2 or 3 years their backpack program, which is food that's sent home in a backpack every weekend with children who probably don't have food to last them through the weekend. When they were building playgrounds, we said, we'll help. And so we basically funded that. We even helped the city, the town of Bedford, because we have Blue Ridge, God has blessed us with skilled sets that are amazing, whether it's, their arts with video like this, or whether it's our children's ministry, which is phenomenal, or guest services, all of these, even our parking teams, they are extraordinary. They really are. You go other places, you'll understand why I say that. And so we offered Bedford, the city of Bedford, when they have events, to send them or to have our parking team come over. And they did help them with the events. They were so good, they continued to ask. As a matter of fact, last year when Bedford had its annual parade, they offered us the #1 spot in the parade. It was, Blue Ridge people who carried the banner. They spoke highly of us. So I should have, and now do know, that the entryway into this community, and I think maybe even into our society, is through the avenue of serving. Now, again, even biblically, I should have known this, because as Jesus talks about himself in the book of Mark, in Mark chapter 10, verse 45, Jesus says this: For even the Son of Man, that's himself, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. Even that I came not to be served. Now he's the King. He's the Son of Man. He's the Son of God. But yet he said, even he did not come to be served, but to serve. And so that's instructive for us, because as we follow Jesus, remember we're followers of Jesus, then we come to serve, not just to be served. We don't just come and say, I just want somebody to serve me, to have a ministry for my kids. I want the best music around. I want to just come, sit, be served, and that's really the extent of it. In fact, Jesus gave us exactly the opposite. If we're going to follow him, we will not just come and be served, but to serve. And serving happens in several different dimensions. It's outside the church, it's inside the church. But that's not the last part of that verse. He said, I didn't come to be served, but to serve, and to, this is the rest of the sentence, and to give my life a ransom for many. That's the gospel. We know what a ransom is. A ransom is a payment to deliver somebody from captivity. And that's the gospel. Again, we are captive to sin, and Jesus comes and by his death on the cross pays the ransom so we can be delivered from our captivity. And he ties this directly to what he says about serving. I didn't come to be served, but to serve and give my life a ransom for many. And so the gospel, what we call evangelism in the church, the new evangelism is really serving. It doesn't mean the others that we've talked about, the other approaches, and that they don't have a part. But this is the avenue that God is using and giving us as a church to introduce people to him, to do what he told us to do. And I'm seeing it affirmed in so many ways, exciting ways. In fact, to give you a practical example of it, why don't you come with me and listen to another story, a story of a couple, Harley and Carla, and how God is using them to do just this.
God speaks to all of us in different ways, and I definitely believe that God speaks to all of us individually in ways that we are receptive to receive. As my journey and walk with God has grown, I will get open visions, and it's kind of like a daydream that came from nowhere, that I can see as clear as I can see you. And so I could clearly see just peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So we originally have been attending a church in Lynchburg for about 5 years. We're really involved in the church there and part of the missions team, work with the youth there, just really love the church. Families have been there for a while. And when COVID happened and the church shut down, we're called out of the church. And of course we were devastated because we are very mission-minded people and we're like, what do we do now? So we kind of started a corporate prayer every Friday night and did that for a few weeks. And eventually we got called back into church. Church was going to open back up and we were excited. And then I just heard God say, you're not to go back yet. What's amazing about that is Harley also heard the same thing. So we were both on one accord with it. Later on that week, I had a vision of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. That was it. And I was like, well, God, I don't know what you want me to do with this. And I thought, well, maybe he wants us to go and hand out peanut butter and jelly sandwiches somewhere, but I didn't know where. So I just kept praying and I ended up having a dream that night of us being at I thought was an apartment complex, and we were handing out peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And I remember there was kind of like a little fire over here, and then there were some yellow flip-flops on the ground. And I woke up and I was like, oh, well, maybe we're supposed to go to this apartment complex I grew up in and hand them out there. So the next day I got with my sister and I was just talking to her, and I could tell that with the virus and everything that she was kind of feeling like she didn't really have a purpose. And I said to her, well, I think God wants us to go and hand out some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. You know, you should come. And she goes, you know what? I know the perfect place. She says, there's this hotel in Roanoke and they have nothing there. She's like, I mean, they have nothing. The hotel's not providing toilet paper. They don't have food. They don't have hygiene items. She's like, they don't even have a pair of flip-flops. And I knew that's where we were supposed to go. So that Sunday, we woke up. We made 26 sandwiches and bag lunches with like drinks and fruit snacks and an apple and chips. And we made 10 hygiene bags. And we went up to Roanoke.
We pulled in and they swarmed us. You know, the sandwiches were gone in 5 minutes, and we pulled out the parking lot, not even being able to feed everybody. nobody, it was 20 people that didn't get bags, you know, and those are the ones I thought about all week, you know, like we got to make more, you know, we'll come back next week with 40 some sandwiches. And then same thing, we got rid of all of them, 20 minutes. And then there were still people that didn't get lunches. So we come back next week, we doubled up again. You know, we're like making 80 sandwiches and we're still running out. And it just kept on and kept on growing and growing. And I don't even know how it progressed into what it did, but now our living room's full of donations. And we wake up every Sunday morning and start making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
A lot of people at this hotel are struggling with mental health and addictions. So they are scrounging for something to make them feel better Friday and Saturday. Sundays when we come, they are broken physically, mentally, spiritually. They have no money. They have lost hope. They are feeling shame and regret for everything that they've done all week long. And that's why God has us there on Sundays. So God spoke to me in a dream. I had a dream. I was just walking with my son. My son's 13. And he said, I feel like God is calling us, or he actually said calling me to go to Blue Ridge. And I said, really, why? And he was like, I don't know, I just feel like God's calling me to go there. So I woke up the next morning and I'm like, God, that can't be right. Why would I leave my church? So I pulled up the website. Lo and behold, Blue Ridge was having their first service here at the Westgate Shopping Center the next day. So we come down here because we don't live very far and we pray in the parking lot. And I just hear God tell me homecoming. And I said, okay, God, we'll come. And so we showed up that Sunday and Woody gave a message about someone making cake, a birthday cake for a prostitute. And I don't know if you guys have heard this story, but as soon as he said it, we knew. And at the hotel, there is a lot of that going on. Another one of the leaderships come up to me and I'm talking to him and I'm saying, you know, I used to work at Westgate, at the Winn-Dixie. This was my first job. And he looks at me and he goes, this is your homecoming. And we just knew that this is where God was moving us.
I lived at one of these hotels when I was a kid, with my mom for probably a summer. So really, you know, I've been where a lot of people at these hotels are. You know, I've battled with addiction. And so when I pull up and I see them leaning over the handrail, you know, because the hotel's like an L shape. So we pull up right in the center and you can see them all on the handrails and they see us. And now when they see us, they come, like the church people here, and they come out and to get their lunch. But you know, by the grace of God, it's not me leaning over the handrail wishing I could get a sandwich, you know. And I could see, you know, how they've lost all hope. And, you know, they're just sitting around, you know, lost. So for us just be able to go in there with a sandwich to get close to them and tell them the good news that, you know, there's a way out and there's hope. It's what keeps me coming back, you know.
The hygiene bags, which is shampoo, soap, deodorant, toothbrush, and toothpaste. We normally can only bring about 20 to 40 a week because they're expensive to make. They're like $5 a bag. Blue Ridge got together with leadership and they all made bags and we ended up having 90, which is the most that we've ever been able to bring at one time. And it was just beautiful and encouraged us. And it also allowed us more opportunity to be able to share more of the gospel. One exciting thing about what Blue Ridge is doing here is that they want to be a church for all people, to meet people where they're at. And we're excited to see what's gonna happen here in Bedford because we truly believe that God is doing something radical here. It's going to be people flooding from all over that are just looking for that healing, that spiritual healing that's gonna be provided. So it's exciting.
So, having seen that, I know some of you, like me, you just love to be a part of that. And that's probably going to be a part of our church life going forward. I know we have people who are going with them now to these motels, hotels. This Sunday, you know, we'll get together, a group of us will get together. We will make sandwiches and all. But everybody can't do that, at least not now. But what can you do? What can you do to stage yourself, to position yourself, to prepare yourself to follow Jesus this way, to serve? Well, the first thing you do is what we always do as a church. You remember the acronym PRESS? It's our core values, P-R-E-S-S. The first word is prayer. And the catch line we have with that is basically pray first, then plan. So the first thing we do is pray. So I would just ask you to go home, or maybe right after this is over, have a conversation, but a particular conversation with God where you say, God, would you show me someone who crosses my path, who has a need, who is far from you, so that I can serve them? Just pray that. And then the second step is to listen for what he might say. You might already have that person in mind, or that person may be yet to step into your life. Jesus taught this very clearly with one of the stories he told, one of the parables. If you're familiar with the Bible, it's the parable of the Good Samaritan. Maybe you're not familiar with the Bible, so let me just recap it for you. There was a man who was going from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and he was mugged. And I mean, seriously mugged. The robbers, the people who robbed him, we don't ever know who they were, but they beat him up so badly that he was left there for dead, took everything he had, just stripped his body. And he's lying there in a ditch, and here comes a religious person. I mean, a preacher, a scribe, a religious professional. And this guy says, I got a lot to do, and he crosses over the other side of the road and keeps going, doesn't stop. The same thing happens again, another religious figure. But then here comes a guy, a Samaritan. Now, Samaritans, as you might know, were of a different race, a mixed race. They had a different religion. They had roughly a different language, a different culture. And this guy comes by, and they were despised by the Jews, by the very people who had just passed by this man, by the man himself, if he were conscious. And this guy, the Samaritan, stopped, put him on his donkey. He had cleaned up all of his wounds, took him to an inn, a place where he could be cared for, told the guy there, call the doctor, have this guy ministered to, bandaged up, and I'll come back in a few days. And if there's any other expenses, I'm gonna give you a bunch of money. And if there's any other expenses, I will make it up to you when I come back by here. And what Jesus was teaching in this story was the very principle we've just talked about, because the question that Jesus had been asked when he told this story, that he told in response to, was this: who is my neighbor? And the answer to Jesus embodied in this story is this: your neighbor, my neighbor, is whoever crosses our path who has a need. And as they cross our paths, then there's a third step. Remember, I said pray, then listen, and the third step is to go. That is to go and meet the need. And it might be just someone who is, maybe they're grieving a relationship, or they've lost somebody, and you can just go and be with them. Maybe it's somebody who needs their lawn mowed. I've heard about that this week. And you go and do that. Or within COVID-19, people who you can go get groceries for. Or maybe it is financial. I don't know what the need would be. You don't either. But if you pray, and you pray meaning it, God will bring somebody across your path with a need. And then if you go and meet the need, and if you go and, this is something we can all do, not maybe comfortable, but to ask people. And I've done this over my lifetime, and it's very, very, very rare that anybody will ever refuse it. Just say, how can I pray for you? Because this is really where our resources lie, is with God. And it does communicate that we have a relationship with God. And so just say, how can I pray for you? Tell me what I can pray for you for. So this would be the next steps. One is just to pray. Maybe right now. In fact, that would be a good time to do it. And then to listen to God and for God, to bring somebody across your path. See, this serving is not ultimately right now. We'll talk about other kinds of serving later, but this is serving people who are outside of your family, outside of your community of faith. It's people who are far from God, people who have a need, And if and as you do, as you actually serve them, then God will start to open doors for us to be the church. Because the reality is, our current reality is, the answer to the question, what are we to do? And the answer is simply this, is that we're to go and serve.
You were a lover before time's beginning. You gave your love freely, withholding nothing. Jesus, my Jesus, you carried the weight of the world on your shoulders. You stopped at nothing to prove you were for us. Jesus, my Jesus. It's extravagant, it doesn't make sense, we'll never comprehend the way you love us. It's unthinkable, only heaven knows just how far you go to say you love us. Our Father, Creator, you hold our hearts together. There's no one higher than you. Redeemer, defender, our great and mighty Savior. There's no one higher than you. You are always with us, gracious to forgive us. By your power we've been set free. And Lord, we stand amazed in your presence, astounded by your mercy and love. Our hands are lifted high in surrender. Your grace on me is always enough. And there is no one higher than our God. There is no one greater than you. So let my life forever praise the glory of your name. There is no one higher than you. You don't belittle our pain and our suffering. You comfort us in our greatest unraveling. Jesus, my Jesus. You are the dawn that is breaking within me. You are the sun that is rising around me. Jesus, my Jesus. It's extravagant, it doesn't make sense, we'll never comprehend the way you love us. It's unthinkable, only heaven knows just how far you'd go to say you love us. It's extravagant, it doesn't make sense, we'll never comprehend the way you love us. It's unthinkable, only heaven knows just how far you go to say you love us. our Savior, great and glorious. There is no one higher, no one greater, no one like our God. There is none more able, Christ our Savior, great and glorious. There is no one higher, no one greater, no one like our God. There is none more able, Christ our Savior, great and glorious. It's extravagant, it doesn't make sense, we'll never comprehend the way you love us. It's unthinkable, only heaven knows just how far you go. Just say you love us. It's extravagant, it doesn't make sense, we'll never comprehend the way you love us. It's unthinkable, only heaven knows just how far you go. Just say you love us.
All my love, it's yours.
Just say you
Conditions when you pull me close. No, I won't resist. Here is all my love. It's yours. No conditions when you pull me close. No, I won't resist it.
Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I really hope that you get an opportunity to join us next Sunday as well. If you don't get an opportunity to see it live, or if you want to see some of our past sermon series, you can do so on our YouTube channel. Either way, definitely head over to our YouTube channel and click subscribe, so that way you can get a notification anytime a new video is posted. Thanks, and I hope you guys have a great week.